So I had the scariest dream I've had that I can remember the other night.
Okay.
So I was a bad guy in a Batman animated series episode. Just a grunt, a henchman for the Joker, the Mark Hamill Joker. And we were at a construction site, and the sky was red, and all the shadows and everything was black. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just the aesthetic of the show. And it was night. And the plan went bad, and the Joker was running away, so I could hear off in the distance Mark Hamill doing his crazy laugh, and it was echoing everywhere. And he was up high, and I was on the ground. And I just knew I had to get the hell out of there. And I was running through this construction site and all of the scaffolding and stuff for buildings. And I knew Batman was close, and I knew he was coming for me because I was just the henchman and he was going to interrogate me. And I was so scared. And I kept running and turning and looking behind me and looking up. It was absolutely terrifying. It's hard to remember, but I think just as he swooped down and got me, that's when I woke up. So I know how those guys feel, and I can very much relate to them now when I see them.
Okay. See, I think it says a lot about you that you were on the Joker's side, because I had a dream where I was helping Batman in a case against the Riddler, and I remember we were hiding behind a car in like an alleyway, and for some reason he was like throwing grenades over the car at some bad guys, probably you. And I just remember I noticed that the box, there was like a wooden box next to me because it was an alleyway. And I noticed there was a big question mark on it. And I was like, oh shit, this thing's going to explode. And that's all I remember from that dream. So
now, see, I think that shows how much you know about Batman, because he doesn't need help, let alone from you.
What about freaking Robin? And Batgirl, and the other Robin, and the other Robin, and Spoiler, and Clayface now, and the one girl that flips around and does whatever. And what's the one guy's name? Batwing, I think? What about all those guys?
Yeah, you're just making things up now.
This is modern DC, where Batman has like 25 different sidekicks.
Yeah, I guess I don't know any of that.
Yeah, you're not missing anything.
So you are in Japan now.
Indeed.
So now, instead of recording across the country, we're recording across the world.
Which is only causing more problems already.
I don't believe in time zones.
Well, unfortunately, you're not the one determining things, so...
For now.
Okay, Palpatine.
Did you have time to check out anything?
Well, the plane took a long time to get here, so I actually watched 3 movies on the plane.
Oh man, and you didn't have any choice in what they were?
There was a decent selection, but of course all the ones that I picked turned out to be total crap.
This should be a great conversation then.
I watched It, the 2017 one, the first one. They were both on there, and I thought about watching both of them, but I disliked the first one enough that I said, you know what, I don't care.
And I've talked about both of these.
Yeah, and I want to go back to see what you said, because now I'm curious, and now I'll know what you're talking about. It was a long movie, but I felt like none of the kids, except maybe Beverly, got the development that they needed. It felt like most of them got just one scene of like, this is who this kid is. And then from there on, they're just kind of part of the group. And casting-wise, I didn't really feel like any of them really fit their characters all that well. I haven't seen the 90s version since, like, I don't know, probably around 2001 or something like that. So it's been like over 20 years. But I remember the casting in that one being a lot closer to the book.
I think probably part of that is this movie was a huge blockbuster Hollywood thing, and the other one was a TV miniseries, so they weren't focused on getting popular actors at the time.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, they have the Stranger Things kid in here, or one of them. But all the other ones, I didn't recognize any of the other ones from anything.
Trying to think of who they are.
They could have made better choices, I think, for sure.
I was going to say the main one, but all I can think of is, oh, he's the kid from It, which is what you're talking about.
Pennywise here also, he's just kind of there. It's just like some generic evil clown guy.
Yeah.
And all of the Pennywise scenes, I don't know, they might start out okay, but then as soon as he starts turning into CGI, it just completely takes me out of the movie, and it's so over the top, and it just feels stupid, especially when he all of a sudden starts moving really fast, or, you know, making a bunch of noises or popping out a bunch of teeth. It doesn't work for me. It just feels very generic and bland, and that's kind of how I felt about the movie. And doing the focusing on the kids first as kind of its own movie, I mean, I guess in the book, the kids did find out a lot more about what it is. In the movie, you don't really get answers for anything. It's just kind of, oh, it's a weird evil clown thing, and then the movie's over. And even the end doesn't really feel... It's clear that they didn't kill it, and it just kind of is like, well, I guess that's the end.
Yeah. The second one, I remember saying, is a comedy, so I don't know if that would make it better or worse for you.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. The kid that was making all the jokes, I thought that worked fine. That was the Stranger Kids thing. Or that was the Stranger Things kid. What did I say the first time? I don't know. Probably out of all the characters, I actually thought he fit the best, compared to his book version, because the book version is just making a bunch of dumb jokes. That's pretty much his character. But all the other ones in the book have a lot more development, except for Stan, who's just kind of there. So Stan, I guess, felt like the book too. But all the other ones, they needed a lot more in the movie. I didn't care about anything that was going on with any of them.
Were people on the plane irritated that you kept heavily sighing over and over again?
I managed to keep it to myself. But even the bullies, I felt like played a much smaller role in the movie.
Oh, I can't even remember them from that movie.
I can't either. And I just saw it like a couple weeks ago. It is a long book, so it's not like they would be able to fit everything into 2 movies or whatever, but I feel like the focus wasn't really there. It just kind of felt like going through the motions of making an It movie. And again, once it was done, I didn't want to see the second one. I didn't really care. So I might watch it at some point, but at that moment, I wasn't interested.
You have to wait for the flight back, whenever that is.
Yeah. So from there, I watched Top Gun Maverick from 2022.
Didn't you already watch this?
I talked about the first one.
Okay.
And how much I hated it.
And I remember when this one came out, I have not seen it, but people said this is the greatest movie to come out this year, or some stupid shit like that. Are they correct?
That is what I was hearing too. And I mean, I talked to at least one person that also hated the first one, or at least thought it was stupid, and liked the second one. And I've literally never heard of somebody not liking this second one. So I really expected it to be a lot better than it was.
Oh.
And it was the director of, I think his name is Joseph Kosinski, the director of Oblivion, which was another Tom Cruise movie that I did enjoy. Although I don't really remember it, but that was a while back.
Yeah, I like that one.
I said that the first movie could have been called Top Douchebag, and that still applies to this movie. It actually was exactly what I would have expected for an updated movie, an updated sequel that is just trying to play on people's nostalgia for the first one. If it wasn't for its reputation, I never would have even tried watching it. But it really is basically the same movie again, except now you have the kind of backstory of the first movie, and you have new characters coming in, and it's affecting the new characters. It feels like the same thing again. It's so dumb, and it could also have been called Top Cliche, because every single scene is super predictable. You know exactly what's going to happen, and it just, oh man, they're so painful in how obvious they are with the way they play out. And they didn't get the woman back, the love interest from the first movie. They replaced her with Jennifer Connelly. And I know you don't like Jennifer Connelly as an adult. I don't like Jennifer Connelly as an adult either. I don't think she's very good. In this movie, she was terrible. Because as a child actress, I thought she was good. She showed a lot of promise, but it didn't pan out, in my opinion.
She should have just stuck with talking to bugs.
Well, yes. See, at first I thought you were talking about Labyrinth when she's talking to the caterpillar, but yeah, then Phenomena.
No, I'm talking about the good one.
Yeah, see, two movies. Maybe it's the bugs. Maybe that's what makes those roles better for her.
Talking about the movie people remember, not Labyrinth.
The movie that people are even aware of at all. Yeah, this movie was terrible. Every character, again, just like the first one, I wanted every character to die, except for maybe John Hamm. He was the only reasonable person in the movie. I mean, Tom Cruise, again, is playing an asshole that's going to just do whatever the hell he wants, and unfortunately, he's always going to succeed with everything that he does, which just makes it that much more irritating. The mission that they have to go on in the movie, it was kind of funny because it reminded me of Star Wars. They have to fly through between some mountains basically and stay below radar detection level because there's a bunch of missile launchers set up that'll shoot them if they fly too high. And then when they get to the end, they have to dive down in between some other mountains and hit a target and then fly out and whatever. And I was thinking of, well, first of all, it's basically the Death Star trench run. They have to hit the tiny target at the end and, fly underneath, below most of the guns and whatever. But there's a mission in Rogue Squadron 2 on the GameCube that is exactly the same thing, where you're flying like a snow speeder, but it's not on a snow planet, I don't think. But you have to fly below a certain level or you'll get detected by the missile launchers and they'll shoot you down, and you have to get to in this case, you have to get to some base at the end. I can't remember. But it was exactly the same thing. And I don't know, it was just so distracting the whole time when that's the mission they're focusing on through the entire movie. And of course, you have all these young hotshot pilots or whatever that are all douchebags, every single one of them. And none of them can do what they're supposed to be doing, and Tom Cruise has to come in and show them that it's possible because he's better than everybody else and whatever. And I absolutely hated the entire movie. And I mean, everybody seems to love this movie, so I genuinely don't get it. I think the only thing that was cool was the fact that they used real planes and, put cameras in planes, but even that was kind of stupid sometimes, because they would have the characters constantly overact because they're wearing like their masks and stuff, so you can't see their faces. So they'll react to a plane going by like turning around in their seat and putting their hands against the inside of the cockpit and doing all this kind of stupid shit. It's like, I don't think real pilots are going to be acting like that.
So would you say it was a very effective marketed movie?
Yes. The way the entire movie was put together, it was super carefully calculated for that uber mainstream viewer that just remembers the movies that they saw when they were young and just wants literally the same thing again with constant references and just the same exact plot structure, the same characters, and I'm going to call them character arcs, but there's quotation marks around that. It's the same movie, just updated, and it still sucks. I hated it so much. I didn't hate it as much as the first one, I will say that, but it was still really bad. Even down to the scene that people sometimes talk about. I can't remember in the first movie if it was a volleyball scene, but like all the dudes playing volleyball or whatever, they had the same scene in this movie. And I don't know what song was playing in the first one, but in here I don't know what the song is either or who it's by, but it's this really irritating song with this really irritating whistle that I just absolutely cannot stand. So yeah, it's not a movie that I would recommend to anybody, but apparently everybody disagrees with me, so whatever. So from there, I watched a movie that I had never heard of before, but it was from 2023, and it was directed by Robert Rodriguez, and it starred Ben Affleck. So it seemed like kind of maybe a big-ish movie, but I had never heard of it, but it was Robert Rodriguez, so I was intrigued at least enough to check it out. It was called Hypnotic.
I haven't even heard of this movie.
Yeah. If I didn't know who the director was, I never would have guessed it was Robert Rodriguez. The only two things, I guess, that potentially could have, that still wouldn't have given it away, but part of it was set in Mexico, and Jeff Fahey shows up at the end. It gets maybe like 2 minutes of screen time, probably a little more than that. But everything else felt like just a generic studio movie that is just kind of like, well, we got to check off the boxes, and we have like however many slots to fill this year for releases, and we just got to make another like thriller type movie. So I don't know if I could describe what it's about, because it doesn't make sense, and it was stupid, but it was kind of trying to be The Matrix or Total Recall, where Ben Affleck is playing I don't even remember if he's a cop or something, but he's some kind of like, law enforcement agent or something, and he finds out about some guy that seems to be able to influence people, kind of like the Purple Man. He tells people what he wants them to do, and they go and do it, hypnotizes people or something, and as the movie goes on, you find out that that's not exactly what's happening, maybe, and multiple times through the movie, you have a huge twist that literally changes everything that's happened so far, and characters that are helping him turn out to be bad guys, and characters that seem to be bad guys turn out to be somebody else. And it didn't work, not just because it felt so generic, but also because it doesn't give you a starting point to care about anything that's happening in the first place. It just kind of jumps right into everything. So when a twist comes and it's changing what you thought you knew, it doesn't matter because you didn't care about what was happening up to that point.
This is so weird because Robert Rodriguez doesn't really make movies like this.
I know, the entire way that it was shot didn't feel like something that he would do. It felt, again, just super generic.
I guess he should just stick with what he knows he's good at.
I would assume, I didn't look into it, but I would assume it was some kind of like work for hire job for him or something, because he has a sense of humor with his writing, and it wasn't in this movie at all. So I don't know, just the entire thing was so weird, and it was super forgettable. They tried to do some Inception kind of stuff too, where the city like folds over on itself or whatever.
Yeah.
There was the same kind of thing, but with trains, I think. I can't even remember anymore.
Well, that's also from Inception.
Okay. It felt like they said, what are some kind of big movies that people like that are kind of going to be easy to say, like, it's like The Matrix, it's like Inception, like, let's just kind of throw it together.
It says he wrote the initial screenplay back in 2002.
Interesting. I would not have suspected that.
I love this review. It says, the mood is gone happy, but the real killer is Ben Affleck standing in rooms explaining the plot.
The co-writer is one of the writers on the new, like on the MonsterVerse movies and stuff, so that says a lot about that too.
Oh.
Although it looks like he did work on Kong Skull Island, which I did enjoy, so I don't know. Actually, according to his Wikipedia page, it says Max Borenstein is best known as the creator of the MonsterVerse film series, which has to be just somebody writing something in there. So yeah, it is a movie that I would not recommend. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but it was pretty bad. It was mostly forgettable, but it was pretty bad still. Even Jeff Fahey was just kind of there. He wasn't, it wasn't like that, hey, look, it's Jeff Fahey. It was just he was just playing a guy.
Well, we can always fall back on the Spy Kids franchise.
I mean, I would much rather watch one of those than this. And actually, before I left the US, I did finish season 2 of Old Enough, or I forgot what the Japanese title was now that I'm actually over here. Hajimete no o Tsukai, I think. That season, part of it was cool because there were some episodes where the original, like the main part of it would be from like years ago, and then in the present, they would go visit the kid that went out on the errand when they're grown up. It wasn't as cool as that sounds, but it was interesting at least. So yeah, that was a fun show, sending kids out on their first errand when they're only like 3 years old or whatever, out on their own. Very entertaining. And that's everything that I watched. I read Phantastes, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, by George MacDonald, which was from 1858. So this is sometimes cited as the first fantasy novel. I mean, obviously there have been fantasy stories before that, but this was the first novel for adults, I guess. But it really does feel like a fairy tale, kind of, or almost like a string of fairy tales strung together. Basically, you have this guy that, kind of like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, actually, and it was a big influence on C.S. Lewis. He kind of, I don't know, it was weird. Like a fairy pops out of his dresser and says like, hey, you're part fairy or whatever, like your great-great-grandmother was a fairy or some kind of crap. And he's like, oh, okay, that's weird or whatever. And then like somehow that it opens into a world to the fairy realm or something like that. So he goes in, and basically the entire book is him just kind of wandering around and encountering weird stuff. And he's an idiot, so he keeps making the wrong decisions. He'll even say something like, I had a feeling that I should go left on this path, so I went right. And then it never works out for him because he's an idiot. There are so many scenes where he is walking through the woods and he comes across a cottage just by itself and goes inside, and there's usually a woman inside. And one of the times that he goes in, he's looking at these doors that lead out to different places, and there's one door that's closed. And the woman says, don't open that door. Like, just don't do it. So he's like, and he goes over and opens the door. And he basically gets, like, cursed with a shadow that follows him around everywhere. And I don't even remember exactly what it does. And that's part of the problem, is it feels like just a bunch of random things. Each kind of scene, some of them are interesting, but they don't feel like they have anything to do with each other. It just feels like a bunch of random stuff. And a lot of them don't conclude. It's just kind of random stuff, and then it goes to the next thing. It doesn't feel like even a complete scene. Some of them do, some of them don't. And there are interesting ideas, and I liked the way certain things were described sometimes. There was an interesting part where some of the trees will try to kill you and like bury you under their roots so they can like feed on your body or something. And at one point, he feels that he's being tracked by one of the evil trees, but he doesn't see it. And he sees like a shadow on the path ahead of him of like a tree arm. And he's trying to figure out where the tree is. So what he decides to do is lay down on the ground and try to get the shadow between him and the moon or something like that, so he can see where the hand is that would be blocking it. But that means he's like laying on the ground right in front of the tree. I don't know. It didn't make a lot of sense, but it was interesting. So I was very disappointed with it. It just was too disjointed. It lacked any kind of like through line. There are characters that pop up through the story, and in particular, there seemed to be a lot of focus on pursuing the perfect woman, I guess, but from like a physical standpoint, like the physically perfect woman. And I thought that was weird. I don't know. There were like there's a scene where he comes across like a block of marble, or it wasn't marble, I can't remember, and he like chips out the pieces to get the woman inside or whatever, and then he like sings her a song to bring her to life, but then she runs away, and then he's chasing after her, and then later this like he meets other women and it's kind of the same thing. It was a little weird, but you can definitely see the influence on C.S. Lewis and on Tolkien. You've got the trees, you've got the like the wardrobe that he goes into. Just on a story level, it was lacking for me. It just kind of felt like a bunch of random stuff. So I don't know. I'm glad I read it, but it's not something I would ever read again. And there was also a lot of, from the Tolkien side again, you had a lot of poetry and a lot of songs, and some of them were interesting. Like I can appreciate some of it, but in a way it felt like it was just kind of there because I guess the author felt like that added a sense of fairy tale-ness to it or something. I don't know. I was kind of wondering what the point of a lot of it was as I was reading it. So I wouldn't recommend it, but from a historical standpoint, I'm glad I read it, and it did have some interesting stuff in it. I just didn't personally really get much out of it as a book in itself. And that's everything I had time for this month. So what did you check out?
I've watched John Wick from 2014, John Wick Chapter 2 from 2017, and John Wick Parabellum from 2019.
Okay, I saw the first one in the theater, but I never saw any of the other ones.
I've always heard good things about these movies, so my expectations were high, and I liked them for a while. I think it was in the middle of the third one where I started to lose interest. The fight choreography is very good. The story for the first one is more grounded. But to me, where it went wrong is the series' strengths became its weaknesses. Part of why people liked the first one, myself included, is the sense of mystery surrounding his world. There's all of these rules, there's all these locations, there's all of these people that are hidden in the shadows, and the movie doesn't explicitly tell you what all of it means or why things are the way they are. And that layered on top of an action-packed assassin movie makes it stand out a little bit more than just a generic action-packed assassin movie, especially in 2014. But as things went on, even at the beginning of the second one, like the filmmakers realized people like all of these rules that we've set up. So the opening scene in the second one is just a guy explaining a whole bunch of new rules and just forcing it in, not making it part of the plot. And by the third one especially, they use these rules not as a background thing, but as the reason why the plot keeps moving forward. So they'll write themselves into a corner and then say, well, let's just make a rule that we haven't previously talked about, and that will get us out of this corner until we get into the next one. So that was disappointing. The fight choreography was still good, but by the third one, it was just one huge action piece that was well choreographed, and then he would run outside, and then there would be a whole nother fight that was well choreographed, but very stylistic. And then he would stumble into an alley, and then there would be another group of people, and the whole thing would just repeat over and over again. And he became this invincible superhero. In the first one, when he would get hit by a car or something, it would put him down for a considerable period of time. He had to recover. But when I got to the third one, there was one scene where he got hit by 3 separate cars successively, but still managed to take out everybody. And it was better when everybody perceived him as this superhuman killing machine in the first movie. But he was really just a guy, and he had built up that reputation. But by the third one, he is a superhuman killing machine. And introducing all of these characters, again, the mystery is lost because it literally becomes everybody on Earth practically is aware of this assassin cult. And he has his gold coins, right?
I don't even really remember that.
That have this very significant meaning, and you earn them and to earn them is very difficult, and he's got a whole bunch. They basically serve as favors, so if you hand one to someone, they have to do whatever they're supposed to do. But there will be points in the later ones where he'll hand it to just anybody, and they automatically say, "Of course, Mr. Wick." Like he hails a cab, and he gets inside and says, "Take me there," and gives him a gold coin, and the guy's like, "All right, Mr. Wick." Like everyone knows who he is, everyone's aware of this hidden underworld, but if it's so hidden, why does everyone know about it?
Yeah, I hate that just hearing about it.
It really bummed me out, and I am not planning on watching the fourth one until I feel in the mood to watch the fourth one, and it's free. I watched The Dark Knight Returns from 2012, the animated adaptation of the really good Frank Miller comic from the mid-'80s. I like the comic. I mean, I know it's critically acclaimed, but as you just showed from Top Gun Maverick, that doesn't mean anything if it's not good.
And I also like the comic, I will say that. I can't remember if I saw the animated one or not.
It's split into 2 parts. I was disappointed. This could have been a slam dunk. I mean, you're taking this really good story of a well-established character and putting it into a new format. And we've had good Batman animated stuff in the past, but I was disappointed with this. It felt like somebody was just going through the motions who didn't really care about the source material. The animation style felt like it was fighting between trying to stay true to the source material, but also knowing that Batman the Animated Series is also very popular, trying to force those 2 styles together, which did not work.
Who voiced Batman?
Peter Weller.
Okay, yeah, I remember hearing about that. Yeah, I don't know if I watched that one or not.
He sounded extremely bored the entire time. All of the voice acting outside of Carrie and maybe Commissioner Gordon was pretty shit. It also sounded like those people were just going through the motions. And I had read this comic not too long ago, and that's part of what spurred me to actually watch this when it popped up. The audio in general felt very lackluster. I think there was music, but it was so forgettable. I don't know. This was a waste of time.
Yeah, that's disappointing. They should have gotten Clint Eastwood for Batman, Basil Polidoris to do the music. Should have done it all in stop motion. I don't know about that. Trying to think of a way to do it good as an animated movie. I mean, I'm sure there's tons of people that could do a good one, if you put the right person in charge.
I think Peter Weller in particular was a huge letdown. The part I think of the most is near the end when all of the mutants, then turned Sons of Batman, are gathered and they're going to go into the city and maintain law and order, and Batman shows up and he says, "No, we're not going to use guns. Like, I am the law tonight and you're going to do what I tell you." But I had to laugh because Peter Weller sounded like he had just woken up. "Tonight, I'm the law." It was pretty bad. All right, my big talk this month is going to be about Digimon Adventure.
Oh, great.
No, see, I'm going to turn you around on this one. So I watched Digimon Adventure 01 from 1999, but it was the original Japanese version of the show. As a child, I had watched the American dub, and I liked it as a kid. And now as an adult, seeing that the original version was available, I think they actually put it on Netflix back when it happened, but I actually bought the discs. We were 100% robbed over here with this show. This show was so good in its original version. In the earlier arcs, it's a little bit lighter, especially as these characters who are kids are fleshed out and introduced, but as it moves forward, there's a ton of growth in terms of characters and plot lines, and there's so much heart in this show. This show is still very popular. I think it just hit some big anniversary, like 25 years or something. And even though there's been so many series since this first one, this is the one that's always still in media and on promotional stuff. When it was introduced over here, it was widely viewed as another Pokemon clone, but it is a completely different animal. There are monsters in both, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. Pokemon takes place in a universe where there are solid, established rules, everything is safe, the end goal is for this kid to battle his way to the top of all these tournaments, and he meets new friends along the way, and the only real danger is him losing a battle. For Digimon, the introduction is These 8 kids get whisked away to this unknown land where there's danger at every turn, and there's a good sense of mystery that's gradually revealed as time goes on. It's good storytelling, it's good pacing, continuity is very present. Pokemon, you could watch any episode in any order. I can just hear that narrator at the beginning, Ash and his friends are about to reach this town where they're going to do whatever, and that's the episode.
Well, see, that's what I was going to say, though. Is the Japanese version of Pokemon any different from the American one, then?
I don't know, but I would say the core of it's pretty much the same. That's a good question, though.
I mean, I do get the strong feeling of the whole marketing gimmick of, gotta catch them all and all that, so...
In Digimon, once the kids find out why they're there and why they're important to the story and how much rests on them, everything gets much heavier. And the fighting they're doing with their monsters, each kid one, is to not die. The various antagonists' ultimate goal is to kill this group of children, which they do not hide nor mince words about. One dude is just so upset at everyone failing, he says out loud, "I'm going to go send these children to hell myself." And then he goes to kill them. And when he shows up, he's like, "I'm going to kill you." Which, again, in the dub, things were a little bit softer.
"I'm going to give you candy."
That you don't like.
Milky Ways for everyone.
Oh, God, that would be terrible. There being monsters in Digimon is partly to appeal to children, but it is incidental to the main story. It just happens to take place in this world with these monsters. The struggles and conflicts the kids go through don't always rely on there being monsters. And don't get me wrong, it still is a show aimed at children, but it doesn't dumb down. Characters die. I'm sure in the dub they say they were deleted or something much softer because it's all digital or whatever. Well, I mean, look at Pokemon. It's always they fainted. But once the kids figure out that shit is really going down and they see their allies get killed or sacrifice themselves, it adds to their motivation to follow through and do what they're there to do. As a kid, I thought the theme song was stupid. Even as a kid, I thought it was so lame. And you know the one I'm talking about.
I don't. I've never watched any Digimon or Pokemon or anything like that. I only know what I hear from other people.
Okay, well, I would say if someone is acutely aware of Digimon, they know the theme song I'm talking about. It sucks. It's dumb. It was always dumb. The Japanese show has an absolute banger of a theme song. It just made me so angry every time I would listen to it that we didn't have it over here. The dub has the theme that's attributed to Shuki Levy, but now that we know what we know, it likely was not Shuki Levy doing the composing at all. The Japanese song is not only a good song, but it is used throughout the series at opportune moments, so the impact is legit. The last scene in the show for this season, there were actually 2 seasons that were tied to this continuity and the rest are kind of unrelated, but the last scene in this season has a different version of the theme, and it's as the kids are traveling back and leaving their partners for the final time, and the goodbyes are really hard, and it's believable because of everything we have seen these characters go through. And on every video I looked at for this song, most of the comments are people saying how just hearing the song brings up all these emotions, and I will say that last scene was a tearjerker. The Digimon themselves being able to talk and reason and have meaningful conversations really helps. They are pretty much extensions of the kids' inner voices and consciousness, and they serve to help them bring out their unexpressed feelings or resolve these inner conflicts. Their evolutions are directly tied to realizations, whether they're intellectual or emotional or social or whatever. So they serve as something other than, hey, there's a new monster, which they could easily do. I mean, that's what Pokemon does. It says, hey, there's a new monster. I also think having each kid tied to a specific Digimon helps too, instead of just we have to go collect a bunch of monsters. And that's something else that really stood out in this show was the willingness for these characters to express these inner thoughts and feelings even when they were not positive and they were not dumbed down just because it was a kid's show. So think of a Saturday morning cartoon conflict, which is just whatever, and you're rolling your eyes and going, okay.
Mm-hmm.
This show had real-life, relatable things, I'm sure, for kids watching. Living in the shadows of parents' expectations, being a child of adoption, divorce, not understanding how caregivers express their feelings, jealousy, depression, loneliness. It didn't dumb it down. And I think that's part of why it had stuck with people for so long, because it wasn't afraid to say, hey, these things happen. And the kids grow individually and as a group, which is a big part of how they succeed during these conflicts. And the show isn't just telling us that they grew and came to whatever realization. There's a progression leading them to that we actually see, so it's believable. And the growth carries forward from that point. The continuity is very strong. It is a single story that is being told throughout 50 plus episodes. And the kids help each other as they grow closer together as a group. The walls they've set up around their feelings are brought down. There's real trust and friendship between them. And again, it's believable based on what we see them go through. Watching the episodes sequentially is a must, which again is separate from a lot of American cartoons airing even now. And as a kid, even watching the dub, I wanted to know what was going to happen the next week. And I made sure to be in front of the TV at that time. And if I wasn't going to be, I set the VCR. And you and I are pretty much dinosaurs to even be talking about VCRs. But that's what we used to do.
Yeah. And was this show based on a manga or was it an original show?
I think this guy made a short movie that Toei said, okay, we want you to make that into a series, but it might have been something written first. But if it wasn't this exact story. It influenced what this show turned out to be. I'd have to do more research. Maybe someone can answer that. The kids did a lot of growing up. There was this whole arc where they're back in the real world, where they now have the added weight of protecting their own families in addition to the things they've already been doing. And there were many points in the show where things were not okay and things were not resolved at the end of 20 minutes. Balancing a main cast of 8 is not always easy, and each kid really feels like their own character. They're all strong enough and get enough focus to all matter. And there were some that were more popular with viewers, but the show does not just focus on those 2 or 3, which is good. And they actually rebooted the show in 2020, which I haven't checked out at all. I've just seen little bits and pieces. And from that, I gather they make one of the kids the main kid, and everyone else is pretty much just there, which to me is a huge mistake. Each kid had his distinct personality without feeling cartoony. And again, this is talking about the original version of the show. I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me was how uncartoony this show was. And again, that American dub did everything it could to try and force it to be a Saturday morning cartoon. I tried to watch a couple episodes of the dub just to get back into that mindset, and it was painful. I couldn't do it. I am never going back to that dub. And I know people love the dub because of the voice acting, and it is unique, but I'm never going back to that. When the kids need to split off from the group, they do it. And they have their own stories, and their personalities allow those stories to succeed. And the reason they split off is not because they're poorly written and there's nothing to do. It's actually the opposite. They're able to expand on their own before they return to the group, and that is part of the story from that point. There's actually an ending to the story, or at least an ending to this portion of the story, and like I said, it's very emotional. I think as a kid, even having the candy coating of the dub, this was probably the most emotional show I watched growing up. And despite it being so candy-coated, the core of the show still managed to show through that. It was really a disservice to the production of the original show to alter it as much as they did. The American dub did its best to completely sanitize the hell out of everything. Outside of altering or straight up removing scenes and plot points, they stuck in as many lame jokes as they could and altered the dialogue to try and make light of serious situations. But the whole show is pretty much serious situations.
All right, you've sold me. I'll check out the American dub.
It's so childish. I have to commend also whoever did the subtitles for this one. I think it might have been Discotech. I don't speak Japanese, but the subtitles felt legit. And I liked how for when a song was playing, those subtitles would also be present in the upper left corner in a smaller font, along with the romanization of the lyrics. That was a nice touch. And I'm also glad that at the time the show aired, I was around the same age as the kids in the show. And I think as an adult, never seeing any of it before, it wouldn't make as much of an impact unless you were willing to commit. But as an adult, having experienced it as a kid, this is a show that really stuck with me, and I am very glad I have it in physical format now. I have nothing but praise for this show, and again, I'm talking about the Japanese version. I can easily leave that dub behind. I know they're going to do Adventure Zero 2, so I'm probably going to get that too, because it's the same continuity. And then after that is when everything breaks off. And I've never actually gone past that, so I don't know. And then I followed up this show watching Digimon Adventure Try, which is a series of movies that came out from 2016 to 2018. So this continues this story, but the kids are now in high school. It was ultimately a letdown. It was banking way too hard on the nostalgia factor. The target audience is people in our age bracket. It's people who watched the show as kids. It's not for kids this time around. So if you're not familiar with the source material, it's not going to make much sense to you. It's 6 movies, and it's basically a really long episode of the show. I was excited at the beginning because they brought back a lot of the voice actors, which was a nice touch. And I know for the dub they did that too, but I didn't watch the dub because I didn't really care. So it was really neat going directly from the show back in 1999 to this movie from 2016 and hearing the same exact voices. But the story was very basic. The entire show was about 20 hours long, and these movies were about 10 hours long. So you're taking half of the runtime of the entire show and saying, we're going to make one episode out of that. It dragged a lot. The nostalgia factor died very quickly because there wasn't much substance behind the story, and things were dragged out and plot points were rehashed over and over again. One of the strengths of the show, which was the realizations that the kids would have, there are realizations like that in the movies too, but characters have the same realizations over and over again. It was very repetitive. There were a couple of things that didn't really make sense. It felt like they were just thrown in as plot points to keep things moving forward, but from a show that relied so heavily on continuity, that didn't fit. So it was ultimately a letdown. It was very long, and it wasn't really worth it. It felt like it could have just been a single movie, because things didn't even really start happening until the 4th one. I am glad that I bought the 6-pack of movies. I would have felt like I wasted my money if I had bought them as they came out over the years. And whoever did the subtitles for these, I will not commend them. They were not very good. So most of the characters in the dub, there's one thing I'll say for the dub that's positive. It's that most of the characters' names were not changed, or they were altered a little bit. All of their attacks and stuff were, which is kind of a bummer. I mean, there's one that's like a giant cactus, and in the dub, when they spin all their spikes out, they say needle spray, which is like whatever. It sounds like a Pokemon attack. Prickly bang bang is so much better. But in the subtitles for these movies, it was like a bastardization of the American version and the Japanese version because the kids maintained their actual names. But some of the Digimon in their attacks maintained the American names. But it was very clear that when they were speaking, they weren't saying the American names. They were still saying the Japanese names. So I'm not sure why they decided to do that. If you're going to present it in its original format, then you should do everything you can to keep it in its original format.
Yeah, that sounds like a weird decision. Dumb decision.
There is one more movie that fully closes off these characters' story, and I'm going to check that out. That one has had better reception than the 6, so I am looking forward to that. I played Vampire Survivors. Again, I jumped back into it because some DLC had come out a while ago, and someone at work was talking about it, and I said, oh, I'll try it again, and I just got sucked right back into that game. I talked about that however many months ago that was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy that there's just so much content for this game being so inexpensive. And it's very addictive. It's, like I said, it's not very challenging, but it's just something you're like, oh, I'll just do one more run. And then it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I think the music in particular is so good for it being, a $3 game or whatever. And the whole game feels like it would be just rife with microtransactions, the way it's all set up. But you get everything when you pay up front. So that's really nice. And even the DLC was not expensive. But yeah, whoever they got doing the music, it's a few people, but man, so good. On the opposite end, I played Battletoads in Battlemaniacs from 1993 for the Super Nintendo. I had played this game as a kid because somebody had it, and we could only get past maybe the first couple of stages. And we were lucky at that. You're familiar with Battletoads?
Yeah.
So for those who are not, they're toads. and they bite. And it's very 90s. Their names are Zitz with a Z, and Pimple, and Rash. Is that one of them?
I think so. And their feet and hands get really big when they punch people and stuff.
Yeah, they turn into objects like anvils and maces and stuff. It was obviously a spin-off of the Ninja Turtle craze of the time, I'm sure. Just like there were tons of TV shows and comics and whatever. I mean, Ninja Turtles itself was a parody of something else. And Battletoads games are known for being very difficult, which is fine. Difficult games are good. Well, they can be good. This was exclusively a console game, but it is set up like an arcade game, and a very unfair one at that. The first stage is annoying. You get the mechanics figured out. The sprites take up a lot of screen space, so everything feels kind of crowded. It's hard right off the bat, but there's also these many points where you just die unexpectedly. There's a difference between a game being tough and you knowing, oh, I'm not good enough to get past this part, but I will be able to do it, and a game just saying, F you. So you're moving left to right, taking out guys, but there's no edge detection on the edges of all of these cliffs, and it's really hard to tell depth-wise where you are. So you'll just walk off a cliff, and it's like, oh, that's a life, and you only have like 3. And then it respawns you right on the edge of the cliff. So if you were holding that direction, you immediately walk off the cliff again. And this is a Rareware developed game. And 1993, this was a year before Donkey Kong Country, which is such a well-crafted game. So I don't know what kind of drugs were going through Rareware between 93 and 94. Maybe they all stopped in 94. But this game is so irritating. And playing it as an adult, I was like, all right, I'm going to conquer this thing because I have more skills, which is arguably not true because I also don't have time to play games all the time. And I'm not willing to sit like I did as a kid for hours upon hours playing the 3 games that I owned.
Mm-hmm.
So I got past stage 1. I said, all right, you might have f***ed me over back in the day, game, but I got you now. And level 2 started, and I said, I f***ing hate this one. And I was playing on the Nintendo Switch Online service, and it has a rewind feature. And I'm not a huge fan of the rewind feature in general. But for this game, I was thinking, now I have another tool in my arsenal. You're not going to win this time. And I managed to get past stage 2, and it was very frustrating because, again, it's treating it like it's an arcade where you just have unlimited quarters to put in, but you only have 3 or 4 lives, and once they run out, that's game over. As a child, I never got past stage 3. And I think there's 6 stages total. And for a console game, you would think if I'm paying $60, I should be able to at least complete the game eventually. But you don't really get any better because everything is working so hard against you and it's just not fair. Hitboxes are questionable at best. And I got past stage 2 and I was like, all right, stage 3, which is the bike. And that's been in multiple Battletoads games. And it's always like, oh, the bike is tricky. So you're moving left to right very quickly. And there are obstacles that appear in front of you, and you have a little bit of lead time to get ready for them. But again, you can move up and down, foreground and background a little bit, but everything must be so precise, like pixel perfect, in order for you to not die. And again, you only got 3 lives, so if you mess up 3 times, you lose. And you have to go through all of that again just to get there. And I couldn't do this stage. I actually passed the controller to somebody else. And I said, you have to do this one because I just want to laugh at how frustratingly stupid this is. And they were like, okay, I can do it. And at the beginning, they were like, all right. But then, again, there's all these points where they're like, oh, wait, I died? And it's like, yeah, because you don't even realize you died because the game doesn't make it very clear what you're supposed to do. And they were using the rewind feature like every half second, which I would be too. And then we actually got past the bike stage. And I said, all right, I've never seen anything past this stage, so let's do it. And the next one was a moving platform where there's these giant snakes and you're riding on top of them and they turn at right angles and you're supposed to basically ride them up to the top. And the snakes don't hurt you. So I was like, well, that's a plus. But again, the sprites are too big for everything, including your character. And the hitboxes are bigger than the sprites, which is just really frustrating. And there's all of these spike balls everywhere. So if you get close, you don't even have to touch it. You just die. At this point, hitting one of those spikes is an instant death. It's not even, oh, it took out some of your health. It's like, no, you're dead. Which is like, what's the point of having a health bar then? And the snakes come in and out of the walls. So you're trying to basically be clairvoyant and anticipate where the next snake is going to come from and when it's going to come out and what direction it's going to turn. And again, if someone is actually able to play this game successfully, please leave a comment and tell me how many years of your life you spent just killing yourself playing this game. It is probably the most frustrating game I have ever played in my life, and not in a good way. Like, you can have tough games that take muscle memory to learn. You know, think of Contras and Mega Mans and stuff like that, where you can build up a skill level and it's fun to play. This game has never been fun. So I got past the snake level, which just kept adding more and more things. So eventually there's like ice. So you're slipping and sliding all over the place. And because there's 10,000 things that kill you and their hitboxes take up the entire screen, you just keep dying over and over and over and over and over again. So then I got to the 5th stage. So you're on this vehicle that is on a fixed rail. And at first, I died about 20 times because I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do. And this guy comes up behind you and he just saws through you. And you're dead. Again, a one-hit kill. And I died about 20 times. And after I figured out what I was supposed to do, you're supposed to hold the direction that you're going in order to gain speed and stay ahead of this guy the entire time. He's the only enemy in this entire stage. And I said, okay, the turns are all 90 degrees, and your inputs have to be basically tool assisted to hit it at the right time, because if you hit it a little bit early or a little bit late, you lose all your speed and you die. And this was a stage where the rewind function didn't really help, because there would be stretches of long track. So, you know, you're just holding one direction. And if you have not gained a big enough lead ahead of this guy, he speeds up on those and you will die. So you have to be perfect before you get to those long stretches. So the rewind function doesn't help, because you're basically starting the stage over every time. There's no, I'm going to go back just a couple of seconds. And I couldn't do it. Even with modern technology and cheating, I could not get to the end of the stage. And I looked up a map on GameFAQs or something, and I said, how close was I? And it was like not even close. You didn't even make it through a quarter of the stage. And you have to do it all in one perfect run, because if at any point you get killed by this guy, you have to start the entire stage over again. There's no checkpoints.
I bet Tom Cruise could do it.
So there is a 6th stage. I don't know what it is. I might go look it up on YouTube just to put up both middle fingers. I've never played a game so irritating. And it's rare. What were they doing? Don't play this game. F this game. That's everything I did this month.
So that's our first What We Watched discussion, recorded from opposite sides of the world. I've been looking for streaming stuff over here, and of course it's all in Japanese.
What would you expect?
No, but I mean, like, I can't do, like, English subtitles or something.
So coddled.
So I don't know. It's going to be... I'm not going to have much stuff to talk about, I think, for a while, until I improve my Japanese enough, and it's going to take a long time.
So you're going to be talking about a bunch of shows made for toddlers next month?
Maybe, if I can find them. Because it's been so hard to find streaming stuff. I finally found a service here that does have a bunch of free, like, anime and stuff. So, I don't know. I might try to watch something. If it's simple enough that I can understand it enough to actually follow it, we'll see.
So you're going to watch a show about baking bread or watching grass grow?
Yeah, whatever I can find that's simple enough to understand. The Japanese equivalent of Teletubbies or something. Actually, I don't understand that in English, so I don't know about that.
An entire show dedicated to the color green. It only ran for 154 episodes.
So hopefully you guys will stick with us as we attempt to continue things. We're trying as hard as we can.
Well, I mean, it's March now, but when this actually comes out, what are we on?
Yeah, who the hell knows? I mean, we're all probably going to be dead by that point anyway, so... So thanks for being patient in particular, because, I mean, again, by the time this video comes out, who knows whether we'll be on track or anything, but it's been hard. recording and getting videos out and anything right now. So,
Well, I guess that's another month. So as they say, sayonara.